What I'm so excited about for this award is it's the epitome of a great cultivator story. It involves somebody who is working inside a large organization who has relatively low positional power. Positional power meaning maybe in her job description and in her title, people would only expect her to do certain things. But she views herself much differently than that and views herself as somebody who's a leader at the company wanting to make change. So it involves the right kind of central character in a cultivator story. It involves kind of the right setup of now that central character having an insight that says, there's something I want to do about this. There's something that's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. There's something that I think should be better. Then that person actually having an idea for how do they do something about it. And not just the idea 10 steps away of like, well, my idea is it's resolved in this way. And wouldn't that be great? And everyone should just listen to me and do it. But an idea of how might I enroll them in that? How might I get them along so that that can actually happen? And so she has this novel idea to actually like capture data, put that data in front of people in kind of a subtle way, convince them, and artfully, masterfully work over time to actually make this idea come to fruition. And so I love this story so much. It's been a highlight of my career to have the opportunity to connect with this person who I admire, whose story I've been telling for years, but now only finally get to meet and interact with. And so please join me in celebrating our Cultivator Lifetime Achievement Award winner, which goes to Jessica Heidt. Jessica Heidt is a script supervisor at Pixar. And what that whole journey was from insight to idea was saying, we need to improve representation in our films. Why is it that Cars 3 has so many speaking lines for male car characters and not for female characters? And we need to do something about that. And she's led an incredible journey that's led to new policy at Pixar, that's led to kind of incredible films, incredible storytelling. And so please join me in congratulating Jessica Heidt and welcoming Jessica to our CultivatorCon stage, where we're going to get to talk a little bit about her successes and achievements. Jessica, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled and honored to be a part of this celebration. So thank you, and thank you for the intro.
Well, congratulations, and lifetime achievement award doesn't mean you're done achieving, doesn't mean you're done, cultivating and all. But I told your story a little bit, like the kind of summary bits, but like maybe take us back to kind of how that started, how you first got that inkling. Maybe walk us through some of the struggles along the way of the 1,000 times you could have given up, like in your words.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you said, I was working on Cars 3, and I was working as a script supervisor, which means that I have control of the giant database of all the lines and characters of the film. And while we were making that, I started to notice that it felt unbalanced in terms of the gender parity in the film. Um, and so it wasn't a new idea to go back and count. I think, Gina Davis Institute's been doing it, the Annenberg Institute, like there are a lot of people that were doing it, but I went in and I didn't know them at that time, and just counted and said, what are we actually looking at in terms of the data? And what I found at that point was that it was about 90% male and 10% female on our particular film. And it sort of made me realize that if we're making our films to be universal and to have this universal appeal, that this was something that was certainly making me feel a little more disconnected from the story that we were trying to tell and sort of what our intention was in making this movie. And so I took that data and I put it in front of the creatives that I was working with on the film and said, just so you know, this is what we're making right now. And I think they kind of knew that maybe it wasn't balanced, but I don't think anybody realized how unbalanced it actually was at that moment. And so they took to their credit, the creatives on the team immediately took that and sort of said, well, what can we do? We inherited some legacy characters like Lightning McQueen and Mater, and for those of you that don't know the Cars universe, they inherited a lot of male characters. And so there was a limited amount that we could do, but they certainly started looking at the story a little bit more holistically about the people that we were representing and made some changes. And then at the same time, I found some allies within the company, and we all sort of said, well, what is what's the larger message or journey that we want this company to take on? And I went back and I then went to all of our released films and sort of did the same analysis of that. What I found was that it was about 75% male characters and lines, and 25% female. And at this point, we were working on a binary, which I'm happy to say is we're living different times now. But in sort of taking that historical information, was able to say, and that was actually what was, I would say, industry standard at the time, at least in animation, was that 75-25 split. And this is all 2014, 2015. So we're sort of at the brink of a real cultural moment, I think, that was happening with the Me Too movement, and a lot of things that were sort of poised to change. And I had the right information at the right time, and started talking to some of the executives, and finally was able to sort of present this historical data to them, and they looked at that and said, well, this isn't how we want to be making our films and representing things. And so this is all making it sound a lot easier than it than it was. There were a lot of meetings, and it was very incremental, but eventually it became something that sort of slowly has become part of our part of the fabric of making our films, is sort of doing these analysis, both in terms of the script. We've also broadened it out to be in the visuals as well, so that we're, some of the non-speaking characters, we're making sure that we're sort of setting a goal for each project and then being able to meet that as we develop the films. So.
Well, and that's really, it's such an incredible story. It's also a classic reality of cultivator stories, right? That when we tell them in retrospect, we're highlighting all these great things and kind of what's happened. And then, it can be easy to kind of gloss over. But like, get into the mud with me a little bit. Like, describe some of the ways you tried to persevere. If you had a meeting and like it didn't go well and you're feeling bad about yourself or whatever, like, I don't know, how did you kind of work through those moments?
Yeah, well, one of the executives has described me as relentless. So I do think it's a personality trait that I bring to the table. But certainly in those moments, I was very, very lucky that I had an incredible ally named Joshua Miner, who's in our tools department. And so this giant database that I use to sort of track the scripts and the lines, he helps develop that, and with it's not just him, there are other people on the team, but he was equally as sort of motivated by this, and he was able to create a tool within this database that we use that made it a lot easier. So then it became something that would then, but it's a little bit more scalable than just me doing the manual count, because that's a lot of work, and we make our movies 7 times over the course of making it. So there were certainly those moments at the beginning, before I first presented it to the executives, where I was talking to friends or colleagues that all sort of told me, don't do this, you're going to be fired, like, this is, don't rock the boat, you're not, it's not worth it. And I think those were, I took them seriously, and I was relatively new to the company at that point. And so I think that allowed me to sort of decide it was worth it, to keep pushing with it. And then, so nervous presenting to a team of all of our top executives. And, there was me with my just like stacks of paper and graphs and charts. And in a meeting that, they kept being like, okay, you've got 20 minutes. Okay, you've got 5 minutes. Okay, you've got 10 minutes. Oh no, we're going to do it tomorrow. Oh, so there was a lot of chaos around actually getting that in front of people. But yeah, there were certainly those moments where it felt like, are we actually doing something important? There was resistance from different places. I will happily say that, like, from our top leadership, similar to Doug's story and Justin's, it's like there was support. It was sometimes, it took a lot longer to get the information, and it definitely like took a couple years before I could legitimately say this is baked into the fabric of our filmmaking. And that was just a ton of communication from me reaching out to people and just making sure that I got the information, and then I would just sort of send it, compile it, and send it, and give everyone status reports that they didn't necessarily ask for. Um, was was a lot of it, um, but I will say from top leadership, there was never that worry of coming in with, am I going to be fired? Does anybody care? Like, I never actually felt that from the top. So I consider myself to be very lucky, because I know that's not always the case for everybody. So, but for me, I think having the allies, Josh, I did have a couple. One of our execs was a real deep ally from the very beginning, so I do feel like I had support, um, that made it a lot easier to sort of keep going.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in there and so many good things. I mean, from being relentless to, part of allies, sometimes it's allies that are kind of supportive. Sometimes it's just putting people to work of, you're going to do this and mine all this data, right? Please, like, can you? Like, and so it's like putting somebody to work, like, that's good. You need that. And then, like, yes, I do think oftentimes executives can be very kind, and that no's are very rare, but yeses are also rare. So that's like that multi-year process, right? Of like, okay, so, but like, is it happening now? Like, do I have support, or you're just kind of like clapping for me? And then like, what, so it sounds like that, multiple years. Like, I think a lot of cultivators maybe underestimate the amount of time it will take for something like this to happen.
Yeah, I know I did. At the beginning, it was, what started as a really small project just on my immediate show and team, and and like I said, I could see small impacts in it, and that was wonderful. And I do think that those small wins, um, were some of the things that kept me going. In that, and being able to sort of count them and acknowledge them, and have people tell me, as well, that this is making an impact and that they really appreciate it. And even if those were just small personal interactions, I think that was really helpful. Um, and then things started moving, I think, in a larger way, which, like I said, did hit around that 2016. There was a lot of shifting within the company, within the world at that moment, or with um so that's when it really started to feel like I was I was hearing more from different sources that this was the right move to be making at that moment. And I was also starting to see the impact, on our films. Like, for animation, it takes such a long time to make our movies. So, we're looking at 5 years from inception to, release generally. And so much of this work really needs to happen at the beginning of the process. And so I feel like now, with movies like Turning Red, with, all of those that are Elemental that's coming out, like, we're starting to see now the receipts for the work that we put into practice back in 2016. So, um, it has been it's a long game. And I feel like now we're also, it's the landscape it evolves under our feet at any given moment. And so I think the sort of latest challenge is kind of keeping up with that, and making sure that we're staying current with what's happening in the world and what's happening culturally, and within the company, and being like, okay, now there's different language for how we talk about, gender and race, and sort of a whole different perspective on it. And so making sure that, now that we have this system and everyone bought into it and we're doing it, but now the world is changing, and so we have to continue to keep evolving it. And you know
I love
it's
that.
fun.
Yeah, I love that, like, iconic. I don't know if you call it a photo, screen grab from Turning Red with the five, girls like standing out there. Like, I love that shot. Two last questions for you, and we could go on forever. And like, thank you so much for your generosity here. One is like, so how did your job, like, did this become your job? Did you get a new title? Did you get like a raise? Like, or like what, like, I don't know, like, how did that change in terms of your focus?
No, I did this entirely on my own time, and sort of in addition to the job that I was doing. Um, I think one thing that I had in the role that I have a different job now. I did actually switch out of, script supervising. I'm now a department manager, but I've always used the access that I have to be able to influence, the room around me. And so whether that was in script where I had, access to the director fairly constantly, and sort of it was just I always wanted to do it with the data, but I also just wanted to be there to remind people that something, you know, is there another way of looking at this particular piece of casting or this line or something like that, character design. And so yeah, I think I've always liked to look at where I'm seated, what access I have, what tools I have, and then as long as I'm staying true to sort of what I feel is the right way forward on things, I just kind of use my voice however I can. I think I've managed to stay not totally annoying.
Well, don't give up. You got to be a little bit annoying at least. It reminds me, Shalina, our first speaker today, talked about sometimes the role of cultivating is kind of role agnostic, right? That you have your job description, but then like, even if you're bouncing around between roles in the organization, that thing that you're trying to advance, you're still working to advance it kind of regardless of your title, right?
Yeah.
So maybe last question, what advice would you have to cultivators right now who are like, I'm the annoying person, like, I don't know, I can't get a yes, like I'm, what would you tell them?
I mean, I think it's being relentless has worked for me at least. And I do think that it's that idea of sort of where do I have, what tools do I have, where do I have access, like looking at your own role in the company and sort of being able to see if there's it doesn't always work to go straight to the top executives and say this is the problem and this is what's happening, but there may be other allies, or there might be other paths that you can get there. So just sort of being creative about how you approach it, depending on your circumstances and your access and the world that you're in. And then I think for me it was really about being able to see those small wins that I was, and to know that there was an impact that was being felt and that people appreciated it. And I was, sometimes that might be like posting on social media or LinkedIn or something like that, like in the cultivator community, like finding the people that sort of say, yeah, you're on the right track, like what you're doing is great, we appreciate you. And so for me it was always sort of, I needed a little bit of that encouragement from people, and I felt like the bits where I would find that really kept me going.
Well, I'm so glad you decided you're worth it when you were questioning it, and that this idea was worth it. And to the literally millions of good, I mean, it's one of these things where like millions of people have seen the results of your work, which is just so incredible. Thank you so much. Massive congratulations to you, our Cultivator Lifetime Achievement Award. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And congratulations to everyone. It's a wonderful organization.
Thank you.